All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for listening to the Working Together Vice President Standards and Vice President Academic Excellence webinar. My name is Jenna Wiesner, and I currently serve as one of the 2 assistants to the Director of Standards. I am responsible for Regions 5, 6, and 7, and also Theta Province. I've served as a chapter advisor in several capacities, as well as the Province Director of Chapters for Epsilon South Province, which is located in Central Illinois. I graduated from the University of Iowa, and I live in Peoria, Illinois, where I work at PNC doing client and community relations. I'm presenting with Mary Pat Rooney, who is our Chairman of Academic Excellence, and I'll let her introduce herself to all of you.
Good evening. As Jenna said, my name is Mary Pat Rooney, and I serve as the Chairman of Academic Excellence, as well as the Assistant to the Director of Chapters. Like Jenna, I have served as a chapter advisor, specifically of academic excellence, as well as a coordinator of chapter development. I graduated from Drake University, Gamma Theta chapter, and I live in Denver, Colorado, where I do planned giving for the Denver Museum of Nature and Science.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mary Pat.
Yeah.
So during this webinar, we will be focusing on how the VPS and the VPAE should be working together. I first just want to say that one of the Standards Committee members should be serving as the liaison to the Vice President Academic Excellence and her committee. And this Standards Committee liaison should be checking in weekly with the Vice President Academic Excellence and report back to the Standards Committee each week, and that can be noted on the Standards Committee minutes. I wanted to say that and get that out of the way just so we all knew that was the most important process here to start with. During the webinar, we'll cover the fraternity's academic expectations, details regarding academic conferences, when and how to place a member on a period of concern, which we often refer to as POC, when the VPAE committee should refer a member to the Standards Committee, Standards Committee guidelines for academics, and some keys to success. So I will let Mary Pat start off by going over the fraternity's academic expectations.
Thank you. So the fraternity has several academic expectations that are included in our fraternity's bylaws. And as many of you know, in June of 2014 at the General Convention hosted in Houston, Texas, there were changes to the specific pieces of our bylaws. So they are listed here on the screen, and we'll start with just the membership qualifications. So in order to be qualified to become a member of Kappa Kappa Gamma, someone must have demonstrated academic interest and have at least a B+ average or its equivalent under any other grading system from high school, or at least a B- average or its equivalent coming from a full-term student at a college or university the term before. So for instance, the B- average for someone that has served a semester at a university or college. So if you do spring recruitment, that would be the expectation. Or if you have a potential new member who is a sophomore, junior, or senior, that's the expectation. And I've cited the area in the bylaws where you can find that information. Additionally, there is an eligibility requirement for officers in terms of academics. They must meet all financial obligations, standards of conduct, and have at least a B- average or its equivalent for the previous term in order to be eligible to be nominated for or hold office. The only time that exceptions will be granted will be by the Province Director of Chapters in consultation with the Regional Director of Chapters. So those are the 2 main expectations from the fraternity, and those are located in our bylaws. If we could advance the slide, please. Thank you. So when it comes to the Academic Excellence Committee and the Vice President of Academic Excellence, the academic conference is an important part of what they do. So there's different types of these conferences. They can be simple one-on-one conversations between a member of that committee and a member who perhaps is struggling a touch but not warranting full action. Basically touching base and saying, hey, we care about what's going on, how can we help? kind of sharing that support level is there. Also, there can be formal conferences with the full Academic Excellence Committee and advisor when a problem is detected that's going to need attention. And a conference is typically offered up as soon as a warning sign comes to fruition. And here are listed some of the ones that kind of pop up most often. So probably a more formal conversation would happen if a member stops attending class or attends class very irregularly. If they're not going and they're skipping a lot, there's probably something bigger happening. If they do not support the academic program, so if they're not participating in goal setting or different programmatic aspects of chapter meetings, that might be time for a conversation. If they disrupt the studying of others, so if you're having study hours at the house and this member is being disrespectful and that sort of thing, that would probably warrant one of the one-on-one conversations. The biggest red flag are going to be these last two. Has a dramatic drop in grade point average. That's definitely a time when a more formal meeting should take place to address a potential issue and really offer support. And also below that fraternity bylaw academic requirement for membership eligibility, if they're dropping below that B-, it's definitely time to have a conversation and see what's going on. So when you have those conferences and those conversations, oftentimes if more formal steps are needed going forward, that's when the term and the idea of period of concern comes into play. Now this is often called POC, as Jenna shared with us, and it's a program designed to provide individualized assistance. So the true kind of crux of it is that it is a plan that's determining how best to help that particular member. 9 times out of 10, it's going to be different from every member, and it's going to contain specific and individualized terms. It's not a blanket thing where you're kind of churning them out. It's really addressing, okay, is it because she's taking a difficult math course? Is it because she's having some other issues in other aspects of her life? What's really the cause of the red flag? The period of concern also is not a finite amount of time. It's not for the whole semester, for the quarter. It's removed when actual progress occurs, and that progress is based on those individual terms that the Vice President Academic Excellence and our committee have approved for that member. And it's not automatic. So if someone falls to whatever your campus's B- is, that does not automatically trigger a period of concern. It should trigger a conversation, but period of concern would come, next. And just like with a standards conference, it is confidential. It's really important to build that level of trust and truly be interested in helping that member kind of get back on the right track with their grades and their academic performance versus, sharing the details out, much like with a standards conference. So when to place someone on a period of concern. So you've had that meeting, either that one-on-one conversation with a member of the Academic Excellence Committee or a meeting with the entire committee and the VPAE, really evaluating what the member is dealing with, how things are going, what she identifies as potential issues to be addressed, and what the committee really thinks might also be going on. Placing a member on period of concern should definitely occur when a member is on university academic probation or when they've returned to campus after being on academic probation from the university. If the university is seeing a problem with their academic performance, we should as well. Also, when they demonstrate really poor study habits. As all of you know, it's really difficult to do well in courses when you're not preparing for class, when you're not doing the readings and really setting yourself up for success. When they show time management problems due to job demands, campus activities, or other responsibilities is a good time because that might be able to help refocus and also build time management skills, which, to be truthful, I think are something that everyone at every stage in life can really use some improvement on. When they drop a class or miss courses, so if they drop, after the date in which they can't get any credit or, all that jazz, That's kind of a warning sign for a potential bigger problem. Also, when you see that dramatic GPA drop, if the member is a B+ average student and one semester is at a C-, that's a sign, and should definitely be addressed, as well as a chronically low GPA. If it's a member that since they joined, they've kind of been scooting along right at the bottom of that radar, that's someone that to me would be warranting of a period of concern, as a way to build their skills and really help them on their academic program and eventually, with some important life skills. So, as with all exciting things, there is a process for placing a member on period of concern, and it's laid out very well right here. So a member of the Academic Excellence Committee would meet with the individual to explore the nature of the program. And that's nature of the problem, I apologize. That's kind of that we care chat, really fact-finding, information gathering, so that when they go back to the Academic Excellence Committee, sharing kind of the crux of the issue, what the member identifies as potential problems, what that committee member identifies as potential problems, and then discussing that as a committee with the advisor present, which is a really important piece to that, and vote to put the member on a period of concern. That vote is done by majority, and having the advisor present is very important. A period of concern agreement, which the document number is right in there, is drawn up that outlines the terms to be met, and that's covered when the member comes in then to the AE committee meeting, so that she's aware of what the expectations are. The committee is aware of the expectations. The document is signed and then kept in a confidential file with the VPAE. In kind of talking through what the expectations are, it definitely creates a level of buy-in on both parties, so that moving forward, it's a group effort versus, being told what needs to be done. That case is then going to be assigned to a committee member. Perhaps it's the person that had that initial conversation. Perhaps it's the representative from a different grade level, whatever works kind of best for your chapter. And that person will work closely to check in with the member and to see her progress. Now, the terms should really be action-based, not restrictive. So this is not the opportunity to say, well, you can't go to social functions until your GPA moves up. That's not the point. The point is to say things like, we would like you to reach out to the math department and see when the math lab is open, and create a tutoring schedule to help you if a math course is the issue. It's really designed to provide support to the member versus take things away. And that also is going to lead to that member feeling more engaged with the process.
Great. Thank you, Mary Pat.
Yeah, thanks.
So now we're going to move on to, once the VPAE and her committee goes over all of those items that Mary Pat touched on, it might be time for an academic referral to the standards committee. And if this is the case, then a majority vote at any time during the period of concern needs to be had by the AE committee. And then that way they can refer the member to the standards committee. The member that they want to refer to the standards committee needs to be placed on a POC before being sent to standards, so that we can try and get to the root of the problem in that avenue instead of placing a member on academic probation immediately. So some of the reasons why AE committee would vote to refer a member to the standards committee would be that the member refuses to comply with the POC terms that the committee gave to that member. Or maybe the member has an attitude problem, or she refuses to comply with the scholastic standards of her chapter and the university. Or maybe she is being disruptive and detrimental to the academic programming that the VPAE and her committee have planned for the rest of the chapter. Or, as Mary Pat mentioned too, the member has a chronically poor academic performance, or the POC terms haven't been successful. Maybe they've been on POC a couple different times and it just doesn't seem to be working. So once the VPAE committee has voted to refer this member to the standards committee, the academic excellence chairman should meet with the standards committee and discuss the reasons why this referral is being sent to the standards committee. So it's strongly encouraged that they have a great communication between the VPAE and the VPS. And the period of concern forms can be shared with the VPS, and the VPAE can offer any suggestions that she has, but she may not participate in the actual standards conference with the member being called in. The standards conference is confidential, and what's said in that meeting would stay in between the member and the standards committee and with the advisor that's present at that meeting. Now, so if the member is referred to the standards committee, the standards committee would then meet with this member and try and figure out what the academic issue is. So they would meet with the member just like they would meet with any other member called to standards. They would think about how any terms that they are thinking about would address this member's problem. How would the terms benefit this member? They would make sure that they talk about what might be causing the academic struggle with this member, try and get to the root of the problem. Mary Pat mentioned a few things. Is it time management, stress? Is it something emotional? Or is it just a really difficult class? Are they thinking about switching majors? Things like that. The standards committee can definitely ask some of the same questions that the VPAE committee asked and try and get to the root of the problem in this meeting. So once the standards committee has met with the member, and if they've decided that probation is the way to go, they would place her on an academic probation. And just like any other probation, it's a minimum of 2 weeks and a maximum of 10 weeks. And if the committee sees that it needs to be longer than 10 weeks, approval can be asked from the director of standards. The standards committee can continue with the period of concern terms if they feel like more enforcement or accountability is needed. So maybe some of their academic probation terms are similar to the terms that the period of concern had, and they just need to have a little bit more enforcement. Or maybe they'd like to add another impactful term to the probation. Maybe the suggestion of going to a tutor wasn't in the period of concern, and the committee feels like this might be helpful. They could add that as a term of her probation. Some other examples can always be found in the VPS's guidelines and procedures that can be found under her tab on the CAPA website, but I'll mention just a few more here. Maybe she attends a time management seminar or a webinar, or she attends a study skills clinic, or maybe she needs to be encouraged to visit with a professional counselor or someone in the health center at school who might specialize, or the career center who might specialize in those issues like time management and study skills. So you can always use those as terms of probation as well. We get a lot of questions about dismissal and whether or not it can occur if someone continues to have a poor GPA. And the answer to that is yes, it could occur if a member chooses not to fulfill the terms of her probation, just like any other probation. However, there can't be an end-all be-all. If said member doesn't get X GPA, she cannot be dismissed from the chapter. So this is where, if you're ever thinking about dismissal, where your advisor, province director of chapters, and regional director of chapters can really come in handy, and make sure that you're having discussions with them before this is ever considered. So some keys to success in order for the Vice President Academic Excellence and the VPS to work really well together is that communication between both of these officers and their committee is key. That's where that liaison on the standards committee really comes in handy, and they should be meeting with the VPAE and her committee each week just to make sure that they're on top of what's going on, so she can report back to the standards committee each week and make sure that they're helping out the members in their chapter get the best grades possible that they can. Documentation by both officers is necessary and should be kept in a safe and confidential place until that member graduates or she resigns. So make sure that the officers are keeping all period of concern forms as well as probation forms in a safe place, a safe and confidential place, so that we can always reference back to these items as needed. And we keep saying the word confidential, but it really is crucial. Confidentiality is a huge part of both of these committees, and all information should be kept within the VPAE, the VPS, and their respective committees. And the VPAE should always be involved in formulating the academic probation terms. It's always good, as I mentioned before, that she meets with the VPS and her committee to go over some of the history with that member and her period of concern so that the member can be helped out the best way that the chapter can. And that's really all that we have for you right now. So if you have any questions, you can feel free to reach out with us if you need any further clarification on the webinar or if you have any outstanding questions.